So my name is Steve. I am a software engineer at SmartThings. I don't have any robots to talk about, I'm sorry. But I do have a lot of code, and so I hope you can read all of this as well. If not, I can try to make it bigger. As a software engineer at SmartThings, I work on the iOS team, and so I was a Grails developer, now I'm an iOS developer, and so I have a bit of a unique perspective on smart apps in that I see how they're developed, I see how the server handles them, I see how the server then talks to the client, which is the iOS or Android app, and then I see how I actually directly work with how the users interact with the client. And so I'm able to see smart apps from every perspective and every single moving part. And a lot of the smart apps that I see out there don't include a lot of the things that, that we've built for them. A lot of that is due to maybe lack of documentation, or in some of the examples I'm about to show you, I can guarantee only one smart app use because I wrote it and I just published it on Thursday. So if you're interested, all of my code that I'm going to show and then more is at my GitHub repo. My last name is Vlaminck. If you can spell it, you can get there. And the repo is minibar9. So some of the things I'm going to talk about are how SmartThings is now writing smart apps. We have this new construct that we call pages. It allows for more complex smart app configurations and allows you to do to group certain parts of logic in a better way and make kind of like a flow through your smart app setup process. There are a lot of elements that we can use, and I'm going to cover a couple of variations that have recently been added. And then I'll get into some of the more complicated things like child SmartApps and DeviceTypes, which is how a lot of dashboard modules are used, as well as Hello Home, if you're familiar with those. So first, the smart app that I mentioned earlier that I wrote and published on Thursday, I've had it out for a while, and it's called Gentle Wake Up, but I recently just rebuilt it to fix some bugs and to make it a better setup experience. And so just to start off, I'll show it to you a little bit, if I can get back on the internet. OK. So the first thing is, the whole concept of Gentle Wake Up is to raise your lights over a period of time to simulate the sunrise. And so right away, the first thing that you see is dim these lights. It's very straightforward. I have a hue bulb that I'm going to do. And then it allows you to pop in all these other ones based on what you chose. Like, for instance, this gradually change the color of the hue bulb wouldn't show up if you didn't have a bulb that didn't change colors. And so we can do all of this with pages because now we have this concept of refreshing the page that you're on. And so that first element, I just have this refresh after selection true, which allows you, once the user selects something, we automatically refresh the page and allows you to do something like, if you notice, the name of that element is dimmers. And so I can check if dimmers, then add these other things, which are just these elements here. The next one you may have already noticed is this new segmented control that iOS has, and I believe Android has something similar. It is just like an enum element. It actually is an enum element that you are probably already familiar with, and you can give it whatever options you want, but you give it this new attribute of style and pass it segmented. And this will work automatically to show up like this of 2 to 3 elements. Anything less, anything more will just show like a normal enum. So it has that nice fallback to it. So that if someone is actually on an older version of the app, they'll still see, it'll still work for them. So those are some of the new elements that I wanted to cover. But the real interesting part is that we are actually working with pages. So in your preferences block, instead of having this really large preferences block, we can now do pages dynamically and allow you to expose them in different methods and kind of help to group how you structure your code however you want, really. So you can actually do pages inline as well. So you could do page and give it a title and everything else. And then do just some right? And so like normally before preferences were just sections and elements, and now you can wrap your sections in pages. And how pages work is the very first one in your list of preferences will be the first page that gets displayed. And so the problem that I have with this app, or with this page, first of all, is that there's no way for me to get to these second pages. But if I add a next page of root page, then it'll give me, sorry for all the jumping around, then it'll give me a next button up in the top right where this done button is. And you can see a little bit of that, not in this app that I'm about to go into, in this one. So I have, this page has a next page, which takes me to a second page that I've just mocked out just to show you. So then the next big part of a page is that, so you have you give it a name, a title, you can give it a next page if you want, or if you have a single page, that's fine too. But we also allow you to specify which page you want the app to install on, which would give you the done button up in the right, and actually then installs the Smart App when it's tapped. Before that, if you to make some of this logic work, like how we get into these settings aspects of like if I have dimmers, then show whatever else. We do partially install the Smart App, and it has like an incomplete state essentially. And then when they press the done button of this install true, then the logic of like your schedules, any other logic that you have for the Smart App to actually fire will actually start going. We also have the ability to uninstall. You can specify wherever you want it. So if you had, like Gentle Wake Up, for instance, has it all on this first page because this is where my core logic is. I have these other pages with optional elements, but really you only need this one page. So I allow you to install it and uninstall it from this page. But if you had a flow where it made sense to take them through step by step of configuring something like, actually all of our modules, all of our dashboard modules like doors and locks work this way, where you go in and you give it a name, then on the next page you can choose which devices you want to use, on the next page you can do some other stuff, and then at the end you can have a done button uninstall, and that, you know, that kind of flow makes sense to have install and uninstall on the last page. So that's essentially how pages work. But if you'll notice, I don't have a next button, so how do I get to the next page? I have these other elements down on the page here that are named href elements. Just like in HTML, it's an href, it's just a link that takes you somewhere else. And in this href element, you can specify a page. I want to go to the scheduling page, which you may have noticed up in my preferences block, I've already defined. So yeah, so that took me to my second page. And here, I don't have install true, so I hit done, and it just actually brings me back to continue setting up here. And another nice thing is if I do set something up here, because all of the pages are dynamic, it's actually pulling down from the server right now, I can actually update this and show it, hey, you have something set here on Monday, hue bulb will start dimming, things like that. So that's a really fast overview of pages and how they work. If there are any questions, I can dive deeper. Otherwise, I can move on to how we use children, how we have smart apps actually installing other smart apps. Cool. So our dashboard, all of these dashboard modules, like home and family, doors and locks, lights and switches. Let's see if I have anything here. This is just a smart app. It is special cased to allow you to have, I don't have any of these set up apparently, but it's special case to bring tiles out to the dashboard. And I'm not going to really get into that because it's not something that we allow you to do yet. But what I will get into is how we structure some of them, because that first page was actually a separate smart app from this one. And if I give this a name and hit next, now I'm in actually a child smart app that I'm setting up. And then here, these are actually a list of other children. And so we just keep diving deeper and deeper into child smart apps. And you get this kind of like a tree of smart apps in that you can keep going down and get to more and more. And here, as I mentioned earlier, where I took a series of steps to get to the end, and now I hit this done button. Now it's actually installed, and now this one will actually start firing because it's officially installed. And likewise, you can uninstall them in a very iOS way. So what I've done is I've created an example parent-child relationship where I have, it's actually incredibly simple. I have this parent app that only has one child, and it does nothing but allows you to install it. And now I have it installed here, and then I come back out, and it's there. And so to do all of this, let me just uninstall that one more time. To do this, we have this new element app. You just give it any name. It has a title, required, multiple, true, just like every other element. But we had this new concept of namespacing, which we do not allow the public to do yet, but we will be shortly. We're currently working on a lot of that and ironing out all the kinks. But if people are interested in making child smart apps, feel free to talk to me after this, and I can try to get you early access. I don't know how successful I'll be, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So I've namespaced this one, minibar 9, and gave it a child, or a name, sorry, of child. And that, again, is just another smart app. It has its own preferences. It has a page, section, and this I'm a child app paragraph element. And so the difference here is that this page and this page are two completely different smart apps. But when I install the child, you won't see it out in the apps area because it's not important enough. So I just install it, I come back here, but you don't see a child out here. You just see the parent, because the parent is really the smart app. It's a way to kind of hide the fact that you're actually installing several apps, and to more or less delegate logic down to where it belongs. So it's not this colossal smart app. So in this parent, I have a namespace and a child for this child app. And this is all you need to install a child smart app. When the user goes through and selects it, we will automatically install it for you. But there may be cases where you may want to install it programmatically. I can't think of a good reason right off the top of my head, but we do allow you to add child app, add a child smart app by declaring this add child app method, or calling this method, give it a namespace, name, a label, and then any properties that it may have. And likewise, you can create child devices in very much the same way. Just add child device, and you have to give it a namespace and then its name. And so I'll go look at my child device is actually just a very boring regular device type. And it has a namespace of minibar9 and a name of child device. And so that's all I put in here. And this will actually create a device for me. And I actually have that set so that when the child installs, I'm actually then going to create this child device. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So that's the C of the CRUD. That's how you create children. Reading from the children themselves is actually all incredibly easy. In a very Grails-like fashion, we allow you to find child app by name. That's a very, I guess, Grails way to do things. And you give it the child name, and that will give you this child SmartApp wrapper that you can call methods on. This get foo I've actually declared in my child SmartApp right here, which just returns a string. And likewise, I've given myself a setter to allow me to set it. And that's how you would update it. You find the child app the same way, and then you can just call any public method on it that you normally would on yourself. And so it goes both ways as well. You can interact with your parent. So now I'm in the context of my child SmartApp. I can get my parent by calling app, which is kind of like self, and then just get parent, and that will return me the SmartApp wrapper for my parent that I'm installed under. And then I can call any method that I've defined on here, which I think I put up here. Which again, I'm just pulling something out of state, and I added a setter to do the same thing, just to show that that's really all it is. It's actually really quite simple. It's just that you need to know how to get them. And again, all of my code is in GitHub, and so I urge you to look at this. But the parent-child relationship is not readily available to the public, but all of the pages stuff is, and I would highly recommend looking through all of that. So I want to get to the child device now. So I have in my installed handler for my child app, I get my parent, and then I call child installation finished because it has. And I've given myself this callback inside of my parent, which then creates my child device. So to create a child device, as I showed earlier, you just add child device, and that method will return you the device that you have, so you can actually start interacting with it directly right away. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just creating it. But then after I've created my child, I'm going to set bar on all child devices. And so getting child devices is a lot like getting child apps. You can get child apps. You can find all child apps by name. I'm not sure if there's a find all devices by name, but you can get all child devices and iterate over them. And I'm just calling this set bar method, which in my child device, again, I've defined. And so interacting between parent SmartApps, child devices, and backup is now a lot more like object-oriented development, right? Like you have these objects, and you can call methods on them back and forth, and delegate logic to certain places where it maybe is more suited. And so this device that I've created isn't actually a physical device. It's just a virtual device. So I have to manually send the event of bar when I receive it. And you can see I have this parent, and I think I've already installed it. Yeah, so I've already installed the child, so if I come back over to things, you'll now see this child device that I've created, and I've sent that woohoo event. And with child devices, we actually give you this handy link back to its parent. So I'm actually going to come in here and uninstall this. And then delete the device itself. Just to prove to you that I didn't have it set up before. Okay, well, never mind, I won't prove it then. There it goes. Okay, so as I showed you, when this child actually fully installs, it'll hit the install handler for that smart app itself, which then calls up to the parent, which turns around and creates a child device. So there it's installed. I'm going to be done. And it's back with that event that I sent. So some interesting things that you can do with this. Like I said, the dashboard, we use this a lot. Where these are actually, this is one smart app, this is yet another. And this is a second page of that same smart app. I actually do a lot of this in my Minecraft integration, where I have, and that's actually where I modeled this after, this parent-child, child-device flow. That's exactly what I'm doing with Minecraft, where I have a parent smart app that doesn't really have much logic other than managing its children. And then I have child smart apps for connecting the Minecraft block to, say, a light, as well as different child smart apps for sending notifications into Minecraft and getting notifications out. I don't know if I'll be able to run that, but I can briefly show a little bit of that. Does anybody have any questions about any of this that they want me to dive deeper into?
Would you be able to give a couple examples of why you would want to use some of these structures and maybe how we use them in our production environment?
Yeah, like even more so than the dashboard modules that we have.
I was thinking things like what this enables is a couple different things, but it enables better code management, but it also enables you to do things like this is how SmartThings is able to integrate cloud-connected devices, LAN-connected devices, etc. I
see where you're going. Yeah, so that's exactly right. Jesse mentioned that this does allow for cleaner code, as I had mentioned earlier, but one thing that I overlooked is that it is actually exactly how we do cloud-connected devices. Like Philips Hue goes over the hub, but like Dropcam, for instance, Withings, Ecobee, all of these actually don't have physical devices. I mean, they do have physical devices, but they don't connect directly to our hub. And so what we do is these physical devices, I'm going to use Withings because I have a scale and I'm used to it. When I weigh myself on my scale, it actually goes, it actually talks to the Withings cloud, and then they tell us, or we pull, that information from them, and then we then update these virtual devices. And so, let's see if we can see where I am. Oh, here's one. So this tile here represents the WiThings scale, but it actually, it's not actually talking to our hub or our cloud directly. We are getting this information from WiThings and displaying it that way. And so how that works is much like my parent-child device situation. You actually install this this manager smart app that isn't necessarily very clear that it's a smart app to the user, but then it then goes and creates this child device to represent what we're talking to. I don't remember what I was doing. And yeah, I can't get on. But that's where I got the idea for the Minecraft block, is we're doing things like that, where we actually just have cloud-to-cloud connection and create these device types that are just purely virtual, that we manage, we send events to, and update, and just they're just virtual representations of the physical things. And so I took it a step farther to actually represent other virtual things with Minecraft. I created a block that just listens to the things around it. And so like if you put a chest on it and the chest opens, the block next to it, which is my smart block, hears about that and then makes a REST call to the smart app that I wrote, which then parses all of that data and creates an event to send down to this virtual device. We actually have some here where you can see, like this one happens to have a pretty high redstone signal, which is like Minecraft's electricity. And that's about all it has, apparently. And so all of this, most things you're looking at in smart apps typically represent physical things, but in this way, I've been able to actually add logic into Minecraft and add, do all kinds of things that most Minecraft users wouldn't be able to do. So that kind of brings me into OAuth and REST. To do all of that, we allow you to enable, I think it's enable OAuth is what we call it on the website. But then you can expose these endpoints. I actually have this smart app that allows you to take a hello home phrase and put it on your desktop of your phone. And so we allow you, in much the same way that Grails does, we allow you to expose URL mappings, and you give it the path that you want. And just like Grails, this is a variable that gets passed into params when you make that request, and then you can specify get. If I wanted to do a put, I could go to yet another method. But this getHTML method is one that I've defined, and all it does is, in a very gross way, returns a gigantic string of just HTML. And so how I have that set up is in my page that I have, the only page that I have for the smart app, I have an href. And before I showed you how to make an href take you to another page, but you can also specify a specific URL, which I'm building myself. And then you can pass the same style element from that I showed you earlier for external, or you can give it embedded. And what that does is it'll either open up mobile Safari, which is what external does, or it'll open up an embedded browser. And so I have it set to external. Do I have it here? Yes. And so what I've done is I've collected all of the phrases that I currently have for this location and displayed them all as individual hrefs. And when I click it, it takes me out to mobile Safari and displays all of that HTML that I set up down here. And so this one's a little weird in that I'm opening up a link to myself. I'm taking you out of SmartThings and into the browser, but still interacting with myself. And so I also included this other link. It's just an href that will actually take you back into SmartThings. And how we can do that is in another HTML block. The iOS app exposes its own protocol, SmartThings://. If you give it SmartApp and App ID, it will actually just open the app. I think Android has something similar. I'm not totally sure. I'm on the iOS side, so I don't read their code as much as I should. So what I'm doing here, though, and the reason I take you out and back in is so that I get this link, I bring it back into SmartThings, and what it's actually doing is it's actually firing the phrase that I specified, and then if I go back into Mobile Safari, then I see my second page that I've set up with 2 easy steps. I do share, add to home screen, and this allows me then to add this link that I actually want onto the home screen. And so if I come into SmartThings, I'm going to get out of here and just show you. See, I am back has been fired twice because that's the one I'm setting up. But if I do goodbye, there, see, goodbye is in there. And then when I come in here, I can just click this link. It opens up, automatically brings me back in here, and you'll see I am back is already fired. And so I wrote this because I get tired of opening our app just to have everything loaded only to then press one button. And so I've opened that up in that way, and it's just another example of some of the cool things you can do. This one doesn't actually use pages, but it uses the href element that was created specifically for pages, and because we needed a way to get from page to page. And the last thing that it does that people probably don't know about is you can get your hello home phrases off of your currently installed location. It's just location hello home, get phrases, and I'm calling label on it, so that this method just returns me a list of the phrase names, which I then use in my href. And I come down here and you have to URL encode it, because if there are spaces, obviously it won't work in the URL. But we allow a couple of different, I don't know what you would call this, different formats, I guess, for your relative URL, which I've laid out here. So we allow you to do the key value param style, where you can pass it your access token. And so then it would be API SmartApps installations, your currently installed app ID, and then some endpoint that you would specify in your mappings. Where am I? And then if for things like IFT, where we actually pass them an endpoint that they have to hit back to us, they don't accept this style of URL, and so we've actually then added in, excuse me, the ability to add your token inline. So it'd be API, and then you prepend token, your token, and then SmartApps installations, your app ID, and then some endpoint. And because SmartThings has ridiculously restricted URL parameters, or whatever rules for what they accept, they only allow like 127 characters or something for a URL. And so we've actually even shortened it down to API/T access token/S for SmartApps, and then your ID and some endpoint. And so this token that you get And again, you have to enable OAuth in your SmartApp settings to get this token. Otherwise, this, I think, just returns null. But you just call this create access token method that we provide, and that will give you a token that you can then use, and you need to use it in order to hit the mappings that you've exposed. And so I'm creating this URL by getting this token. Oh, it also adds it to state.access token automatically. And so here I'm actually checking if I have the token, return it, else create one, and return that. So there's a lot of stuff that I've just glazed over. So I highly recommend looking at my GitHub repo for this talk. All of my code is there, and then some, where you can get I tried really hard to document in comments about the intent of what certain things are, like how you should use it or how they were intended to be used, and things like that. And so a lot of these things that I've showed you aren't documented yet because they're not completely publicly available, but pages are available, URL mappings are available, any of the OAuth stuff is available for you to use. And you can see some examples of it here. Also, if you go to build.smartthings.com, that's a really good resource, and there are a lot of really good examples there as well. So we have, I guess, 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions they want about any of it? Okay. Yeah.
When you did you click the link, and were you actually opening Mobile Safari, or was that a local browser built into the app?
That particular case.
Going right back to the app.
Right. So that particular case, I actually did open up Mobile Safari, and that is done because I specified. I specified this style of external. If I were then to change this to embedded, then it would be an in-app browser.
And then, but that link points back. That link has a special setup from in the web page. You go right back into the app.
Right. And so if you did it in embedded, that link wouldn't work because you're already in the app. And so that's why I did it external. But we do, for instance, like when we're doing cloud-to-cloud setups, like SmartThings or ecobee or anything that you have to go through an OAuth flow with another third party, we typically do embedded so that you have a done button that will bring up an in-app browser. It's not very often that we use external, but in this case, I had to. But yeah, if I actually went into, worst. Okay. Nope. Habit, sorry. But yeah, so we've opened this up so that you can do, instead of HTTP, you can do SmartThings. I think there's an S on that. Just like that. And so I've just baked that into my HTML down here. Oops. Yeah. Shoot. So that's it, I guess. Again, my repo has all of my code, and I hope to get this phrase execution one out publicly available to other people if I can figure out a smoother flow, because it's kind of wonky going into the browser and coming back out, but I don't know that I can get around that. But I just wrote it on Friday for this, so I can probably improve on it somewhere. yeah, that's all I have.